Hello and welcome to the BeeRPad. We have a great show for you today. We're going to share some thoughts and theories on Ted Lasso season 3 after the first episode. With me, as always, is the one and only Marcus Beer. Actually, I'm sure there are other Marcus Beers, but to me, you're the only one that matters.
I'm the only one I know anyway. So thank you for that very, very kind introduction, Raymondo. Yes, I'm not sure about promising people an excellent show. We'll see how that goes. But yes, Ted's back.
Yes.
AFC Richmond, come on. So yes, it feels like forever. It really does feel like such a long time since we last were down in Richmond, which is a beautiful part of the world, by the way. I used to work near there and drink near there back in my callow 20s. But yes, it's back, and it's interesting. I've seen some reviews where people are not very happy with it, and some reviews.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite ridiculous, to be honest with you, that anybody would be slagging the show off immediately. It's almost as if it's the victim of its own success. And I think we're going to see this more and more over the coming weeks, where we are seeing people criticizing it because it's not going the way they want to, and this level of fan entitlement. I mean, we obviously spoke last time out where we talked about some ideas and some suggestions as to where it might go. But I mean, that was just suggestions, not where we wanted to go. Because at the end of the day, we're not the experts. We're not the ones with the talent who are paid a shit ton of money to write it. That is the creative team behind it. And that creative team have earned more than enough leeway to do whatever the hell they want based on the two excellent seasons that came before it. And the other work that they have done in their varied and excellent careers. So, yeah.
I agree. Now, without getting into details, how did you feel as you were watching the first episode? Because for me, it felt like, putting on your favorite hoodie or your favorite blanket. There was just something really comforting about seeing all these characters and having them hit their beats again and act the way we want them to act.
I think it's a case of and we've said this before. Ted Lasso came out at a time where we didn't know we needed that character, these characters, this situation, because we were all hurting all over the place, didn't know what's what. I mean, there's still a lot of that going on, but we don't have to deal with a deadly pandemic. Now it's just a threat of World War III, war criminal out of Russia, crazy people in charge of Congress now, a Satsuma screaming he's going to be arrested on Tuesday and then begging people to riot again.
Yes.
It's all sorts of fun stuff. But let's face it, I mean, we were deep in the shit when Ted Lasso came out. Pandemic. Trump, everything else that was going on. It was the balm for our souls.
Right.
And I think, it's like catching up with old friends. It was just that moment where you walk into a bar or a cafe or a restaurant and you see people you haven't seen for a while. It's like, how you been? It's so good to see you. What have you been up to? What's going on with you? I mean, even though when we discussed this before in the Lassoverse, we have it's only been a matter of maybe 2 months since they gained promotion, as they and they haven't even started the season
league
yet. The league season. But no, it just it was just nice. Everybody's looking good. Everybody was it was warming. It was comfortable.
Absolutely.
It was nice. And then of course you had this they start off with this huge bait and switch. And let's face it, if you haven't watched Ted Lasso, you're not watching this show anyway. If you can't watch Ted Lasso, I'm really sorry, but episode's been out for 5 days. We're going to spoil it. There's going to be spoilers. If you have no interest, I'm going to count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bang. Now we're in Spoilerville. Yes. Spoilerville population us and whoever's watching. So starts off with Ted. I mean, he looks so frazzled. His hair everywhere. He's sitting, obviously, in Heathrow Airport. He is on the phone. His wife, ex-wife is texting. And you think, what the hell's going on here? And then obviously it pans out to, she says, oh, I love you, blah, blah, blah. The flight, what's going on with the flight, the flight. I was like, is he going home? Is this like immediately after promotion? Is he going back to Kansas? And it turns out it's not. It's his kid.
It's Henry.
Been all summer. Yeah. Henry's been with him. They've been doing Legos and touring sewers and having an absolute blast all summer, as you should. When when you can do that with kids in in relationships that are difficult and fractured, to say the least. Then we have this goodbye, and
it was heavy. It started
heavy. It started heavy, and it didn't get a huge amount lighter, to be honest with you. I mean, it wasn't exactly Sideshow Bob walks into a rake and goes and walks into another rake. There was none of that comedy. Right. I mean, it was all about setting up everything. I mean, you had Keeley running, Keeley's PR, and kind of, scared of her CFO who'd been stalled by her angel investor and was throwing up, every day and crying into various people's shirts. And then you have Keeley and Roy having the conversation with Roy's niece to say, they've parted, because now obviously they had this discussion. They were on a break, and now it's obviously gone to full parted. But I mean, Phoebe was smart. She said, I think you're a fucking idiot for letting it go. And then, we have Rebecca panicking about everybody putting Richmond last. I mean, let's face it, that's the way it goes when if you're not a football, especially an English football aficionado, the promoted teams are always the bottom three to go down. I mean, in the start of the season, everybody suggests, because it literally has gotten to the stage where it's normally the same three clubs come up and the same three clubs go down.
Right. Norwich.
I mean, Norwich, West Brom, Sheffield United,
Burnley, like those guys.
Burnley. I mean, you look at Burnley's a prime example. Far and away best club in the Championship, which is that level below the Premier League, and they just got twatted six literal ways from Sunday by Erling Haaland and Man City, and that's the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
So, I mean, thankfully, we've had some precedents recently where in 2015, Leicester, and most unlikely, 1,500 to 1 to win the title, and they did it. Oh, I wish I could have gone back and put $1,000 on that. Yes, it's understandable. And you see this level of panic, and you see it's like, why? And then you see Rupert's involved, and Rupert's like, oh, he's rubbing it in. And that brings us to who's in charge of West Ham?
Nate, the Wonder Kid.
Yeah, the Wonder Kid. Kinder. There you go. The Wonder Kinder Egg.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, you have hopes for him when he pulls up at West Ham Stadium in his little Mini. That we saw in season 1, episode 1. I thought it was a lovely callback.
Yes,
to definitely. Coach Beard and Ted and all their luggage being driven by Nate to their lodgings, and they were all just crashed in. It wasn't a big Mini; it was an old school Mini,
right?
And then you see, you think, oh, perhaps he's kept some semblance of himself. And then you see him entering this huge stadium that was actually built for the Olympics in 2012. And then West Ham moved into it. And for the longest time, they were really shitty for the first, I think, season and a half there because it's a big bowl. But now it's, now things are better. But it's an amazing, state of the art, beautiful stadium. It's only 10 years old. But you see him coming in, and somebody says hi to him, and he ignores them.
Right.
And he goes to his desk, and what's the first thing he does? He checks his social media, and somebody knocks on his door with a message. He basically tells them to
get out.
Yeah, get out. And you're like, oh God, because he's like looking at the social media, is all saying this good stuff, and I'm guessing it's the same. He's probably reading the same tweets over and over. Right. Much like we do when we find the comments on our show, and we only read the good ones. But he's believing the hype. He's biting. He's getting into it. And then, and please feel free to chime in. I mean, I'm giving this whole synopsis away. I mean, he has this meeting with Anthony Head as Rupert. In the gaudiest, tackiest chairman's office I've ever seen in my life.
The window. A lot of people said it has a Palpatine thing going on. Did you see that as well?
Palpatine, Chinatown.
Okay. Yeah.
Incel douchebag version of Chinatown. That's the way I'd look at it. But yes, he has this conversation. What do you think about Richmond being placed 20th, and Nate with it, because he's a very quick lad. He's like, well, that's because they only counted up to 20. There was no 21st, which is true, because they would have been. And this just twisting the knife. It's this Nate who's been bullied his entire life is enjoying. You can see he's enjoying it. I mean, when I rewatched some of the episodes, and we talked about the Everton one in particular, where he had his thoughts, he gave them to Ted, and Ted said, you read them. And he just tore the team apart. Remember when he ripped them? And it was just all insults. It was like a comedy roast.
Yeah, very much.
But you could see that maliciousness, that underlying. Now you can see it if you rewatch that episode, and that bit of maliciousness was there, and it was only going to get worse.
Right, turned up to 11 now. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of it is because of Rupert. You could see how Rupert is manipulating him, giving him the approval that he craves. I'm sure he gives him a car at the end of the episode. An expensive car. So yeah.
What a car. An Aston Martin. Yeah. Oh, what a car. And he sits. I mean, it is funny. I did expect that when he started that car up, all I was expecting here was dun 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 dun. Yeah. Because they're being very they're kind of hitting us over the head with the Star Wars analogy. Yeah, they really are.
Does that mean is Nate gonna throw Rupert out the window?
Is Rupert gonna try and poach Ted? You will. Oh, he's gonna try and poach Barry Kent. Roy Kent. Barry Kent. Barry Kent's a character in a book. Sorry, he's a bully in a book,
and he's not Roy
Kent. Right? Yes, exactly. He's not Roy. Yeah. So Roy Kent, he'll try and poach him, and Roy will pick him up and throw him out the window. I just think yes, it could. But I think it got us. As an episode. I mean, there's so many parts. I'm sure you want to talk about the press conferences because they were obviously a major part, and I'll let you talk about that. But for me, it felt like everybody. It was catching us all up. It was reminding us that all was not good. In the Richmond garden, the last time we left. Yes, they'd had promotions. The promotion. But
I liked it. See, when at the end of season 2, everything was on the up and up, but I kind of like that at the beginning of season 3, there's some regression, which is, I think, more realistic because not everyone improves. It's not a linear path. Sometimes we stumble as we're getting better. So I like that all the characters seem to have regressed a little bit. Ted is wondering why he should be there. Roy is having doubts, that he's not a tactical genius like Nate was. Rebecca seems fixated on Rupert again. not saying, we have to beat West Ham. She's saying we have to beat Rupert, So there's some regression there, which I think is good and more realistic.
Yeah, I think that whole conversation between Ted and Coach Beard, as they were walking down the little arcade, of like, do you ever think 3 years later we'd still be here? I think that was more of a statement from the creators than just Ted Lasso. I mean, yes, I think they expected perhaps to be fired after the first season,
right?
But I also think nobody was they may have had a 3-season arc planned out, but I'm sure they were not expecting it to take off like this. And I thought that was quite amusing.
Right. A lot of showrunners say ending a series is hard, partially because a lot of people don't expect the chance to even do it. They expect to get canceled at some point. So maybe they weren't ready for it.
It's a very American thing as well, because in Britain, I mean, Ted Lasso is very much a British show in a number of episodes that you get. I mean, you look at The Office, for example, the British Office. How many episodes were there? 20?
Yeah, I think,
And how many of the American version? 10 times that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, obviously, they went off with their own characters and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, British shows tend to be 8, 10, 12 episodes. That's the season. And then, you tell your stories, and, they don't tend to leave things on too much of a cliffhanger. I mean, if you look at it, we haven't had a cliffhanger every season. We've had a little taste of what we can expect, and I think they've handled it perfectly.
Yeah, like a British series is, like you said, 8 to 10, and an American season is sometimes 26 episodes. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, God, that pressure. I mean, that's why. I mean, and I think you look at Ted Lasso and you compare it to something like The Big Bang Theory. That stuff is on a set and doesn't move. Ted Lasso does move outside. It does have a lot more sets. So it does feel more like a dramedy to me. And does feel very British. And I think that's a lot to do with the British writers that they've brought in, which I think is very smart, not just for the footy, but for the colloquialisms, the Britishisms.
Right.
Because, we are a unique species, or race, nationality, whatever we are. We're a unique bunch of wankers.
So, Marcus, I wanted to share 2 theories with you that I had about the show. The first was right from the beginning. After he drops Henry off from the airport, Ted has a impromptu therapy session with Dr. Sharon. And one of the things she says is, "You don't quit things, Ted." After he's questioning, why am I still here, kind of thing. And Sharon says, "You don't quit things." And this is total conjecture. I have no idea if this will actually happen, but maybe the end of Ted's story is him quitting as manager because it'll be better for him and better for the club. It doesn't necessarily mean that he'll leave England and go back to Kansas, but maybe the best thing for him is, he quits as Richmond manager. Maybe Nate comes back and Roy and Nate are in charge of the club.
Yeah.
And maybe he settles down with Sassy somewhere in England. So that's theory 1.
All right, that's theory 1. Okay, hit me with. Do you want to discuss that one first?
Yeah. Well, I mean, is that plausible? Do you think it's?
Oh, it's eminently plausible. We've already. I mean, I think it's funny. We're discussing the end of the series.
Yeah.
Just after we've had episode 1. But yeah, it's eminently possible. There are so many things. I'm wondering if he has a 3-year contract. And at some point, the contract renegotiation will come up. Because we'll see how that goes, because they never really talked about the finances,
right,
and those sort of things. The football things, and it's fine. We don't need to hear that. So yeah, I mean, maybe he's 3 and done. He wants to go home to his kid. We had the discussion before. Is he going to get poached by MLS? Is he going to get poached by the US national team?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't want to think about it. I want to see where his journey goes as envisioned by that creative
Right.
team.
I'm just thinking because the show does do a lot of foreshadowing. In the past, it was more subtle, like in the dart game where he said, you would ask me if I played darts, and I would have said yes every weekend until my dad passed away. And then a bunch of us on Reddit theorized from that dart game scene that Ted's father committed suicide, and later in the next season we found out that was the case. So
Right.
they do, and maybe this is more heavy-handed and more, which I think is a problem with a lot of American
Maybe Ted commits
movies.
suicide at the end of the season. There you go. There's a
No.
fucking upper to end the season on.
And then
Stick that in your Reddit post.
Then it goes to static, like Sopranos, and you're
You
like,
just
what?
see his feet. You see those feet and the khakis just. Ugh, no, thank you. Okay, hit me with theory 2.
Theory
Reddit
2,
boy.
which is because you mentioned details on Zava, who is a player that will be on Richmond squads later, and who you learned more about than I did. So when they're in the sewer surrounded by Poupe, Richard gives a theory on talks about wine a bit, and he says, no, I don't know about expensive wine. A great wine does not have to be expensive. And I think that might be what happens with Zava. Again, this is totally guessing. Zava will be an expensive and established player. They bring him in, and he doesn't make Richmond better. And they find out that the collection of less expensive players were already great, and that's what makes this squad great.
Yeah, the Leicester City effect.
Yes.
I do find it interesting. Have you seen the title of the next show?
I have not.
It's the title of the next episode is "I Don't Want to Go to Chelsea."
Who does? Now, well, actually, the neighborhood itself is rather nice.
Let's face it. You go to Chelsea, you get a game once every 6 months. But no, I mean that's as far as I can read from the synopsis, because obviously they dropped that at the end. At the end of of the new episode, the synopsis reads like this Zava character wants to come to the UK, wants to come to England, play in the Premier League, wants to be in London, wants to be in West London, but doesn't want to go to Chelsea.
Oh, that's interesting.
So is he a free? I mean, he's a free transfer. Is he out of contract? Right, and that would make sense because you can't, despite Richmond having all these riches of the Premier League season, you can't see Rebecca Waltham funding £100 million purchase.
Right. She's not a oil country or a big American conglomerate. So
exactly. So yeah, I mean that's the thing. Is this? It's going to be interesting. I will find out a lot more in a few days. But I think this is where we start to see Zava come in. But I also think it was interesting that they had Roy saying that he's not a tactical genius, but then he said 4-4-2. This is how we play. Everybody knows their job. Everybody knows their position. Everybody knows what they have to do. 4-4-2, and that's if this new character comes in, upsets the apple cart a little bit. Is this is this somebody who plays as a 10? Is it a winger? Is it a winger who doesn't track back? Is it a is it Cristiano Ronaldo?
Yeah, that was our speculation that he was like a Ronaldo character where he's supremely talented, but is just locker room.
And they've got this great balance now. Even Jamie Tart is just
he's stepping up.
He's stepped up, and he's not stepping into Poupe. Jesus, yeah.
I like the exaggerated Manc accent. Partially, I have a friend Jenny from Cheshire, so I always call her Jenny, and she makes me watch Coronation Street, where there's a Sophie, a Maddie, and another A.
Coronation Street in, good God, probably about 30 years. It is available on BritBox over here, but I think actually I did put it on for like 5 minutes when I had BritBox the app up and running. I was like, oh, Coronation Street, and then it's like, oh, I don't recognize any of these people. Never watching it again. And the same with EastEnders, which I mean, these are two soap operas, and soap operas in Britain totally different to soap operas here in America. Soap operas in America are something that was on during the day. Glamorous, beautiful people, whether it be in a hospital or
right
whatever.
in
It's
Salem.
all glamorous. Yes, they're all fictional towns, real towns, but they're all like very rich. Blah 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 blah. Britain, our soap operas are kitchen sink dramas. It's what we do. We celebrate the misery, and it's people like you and me having a miserable fucking life. There's murder, there's theft, there's blackmail, there's intrigue, there's racism, there's people firebombing restaurants. And that's all in one episode. And then there's the Christmas episodes with, who shot so-and-so, and did he fall into is this person dead? And then he comes back 2 years later and you go,
a lot of baby stealing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes on in these soap operas that is very similar tonally with story wise that happens to in American ones, but it's just so much. It's imagine it being in Jersey City or something like that, or Pacoima,
right?
Yeah.
Now I wanted to talk about. It seems like a lot of the characters are seeing others' problems more clearly than the characters themselves. You brought up Phoebe telling Roy, "I think you're being stupid," and in Keely's office, she's telling Rebecca, "Let Ted be Ted, let Rupert be Rupert." So it just seems like a lot of people are more aware of others' problems more than they are their own, which also I think is kind of realistic.
It is. I mean, there's especially when you're looking at all the pressure everybody's under. I think Keely's obviously got this empathetic gift. She is a very empathetic character. She can see the wood for the trees, except for what's right in front of her face. She perhaps can't deal with her own issues as well as she can with everybody else's. By the way, when the doctor got off the phone with Ted, that line when she went back into her bedroom and her boyfriend said, "So, did you get off then?"
Not
or
yet.
You finally got off then? Yeah, he's like, "No, I haven't." And I thought that was just smutty and funny.
Loved it.
But yeah, I mean, we're going to see these things, but you already start to see some of the course corrections. And let's talk about those press conferences.
Yes,
because there's there's this. West Ham has this huge press conference to talk about the coming season and how everybody said that they will be top 4 finishers because they have the wonder kid and they've got a good squad and bloody blue and I wonder
presumably a rich owner again. So
yes, I just wonder how rich Rupert is, and I wonder if he's perhaps going to get done for something shady. I wonder if he's going to get his true comeuppance, where it's like, oh, get all your money out of perhaps Russian crypto. And all of a sudden, Rupert's off to jail. That would be funny. But yeah, you see Nathan sit there and he's asked these questions and he freezes and he's not feeling himself. And he has to basically look get under the desk for a second, remember
his trauma.
His trauma, all the shitty things that have happened to him, his bullying by his father, the players before Ted arrived. That photo that he thought Ted didn't love, even though he didn't know that Ted had it in his house. And then he did what he does, which is he spits. It's like he's clearing the plug to let the bile flow. And then he sits up and then he starts going and ripping into Ted and ripping into Richmond. He repeats the 21st position thing. He says that Ted's a shit coach.
That's why they're in the sewers, because they're so shitty.
Because they have a shitty team and a shitty coach, and he's punching down. He's punching down to cover his own insecurities, and that sets Rebecca off and everybody else.
Right.
Oh, and Ted, you got to fight. You got to fight. You got to fight. And that's not in Ted's nature. He's not that guy. He will fight, but he fights in a totally different way.
Right.
He's curious, not judgmental.
Right. Now, taking a few steps back, I liked that essentially Nate had a panic attack, which is what he leaked Ted's panic attacks to. They used that same high-pitched sound when Ted had his panic attacks. So I thought that was interesting that happened to him. And before his panic attack, I love that he busted out some of, I believe it's from The King and I, where he starts saying the lyrics to Getting to Know You.
Yes.
So
getting to know all about you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that was,
I like
that went over everybody's head.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have the charisma when he's being mean. That's the only time he has that charisma, that confidence. Being mean gives him confidence because he's quick-witted. He doesn't have the confidence in being a decent person.
Right.
He has to punch down.
But I do love that this has incorporated musicals. One of my favorite Coach Beard lines ever is when he goes, "Fuck yeah, the Gershwins." Like, I just love that stuff. So.
Well, let's face it, Beardy's.
Beard?
I watch. There's another show from the UK called Gavin and Stacey.
Yes.
And the one of the characters, the supporting characters is Nessa, this incredibly wonderful wild Welsh woman. And she just keeps on popping up with these things of like that have hinted at her life. You don't know her age, hinted at her life before the show, and it's like, oh, she's a curry expert because she spent a year in Bollywood directing 100 pictures, and she had apparently had an affair with a former minister in the UK, and she drives a truck and this, that, and the other. I mean, and that's Coach Beard for me. He is this enigmatic character, this lone gunslinger, who is, not necessarily lone, but he's there as Ted's ultimate wingman and his conscience and he does everything that keeps Ted balanced, if you will.
Right.
But so many things that you hint at with his past. We saw it in that standout episode, his night in London.
Yeah.
You got to think that shit happens all the time to Coach Beard.
Yeah.
You got.
There was one subtle thing he did when they were talking about playing FIFA and learning who Maradona was. And Ted said something like, then I had to explain to Henry why cocaine is actually bad for you. And Beard's face as he said that, it's just like, what? Like, and then Beard knowing about the effects of smoking toad venom. Like, so in addition,
he knows a lot of things. He knows a lot of things. The man that beard hides a multitude of escapades.
Absolutely.
So then, obviously, after Nate's press conference, Ted watches it. They all watch it, and they're all aghast. And Rebecca wants Ted to fight back. Not necessarily for himself, but for her. I mean, to get one over on Rupert.
Yeah,
and I think it's. Yeah, and the Ted's press conference is he's pure Ted.
Absolutely.
And that's what it's beautiful in that he doesn't say a bad thing about Nate. He turns everything on its head. He wins everybody over.
Including Rebecca, who
then gets a text from Keeley saying,
way to let Ted be Ted.
Yeah. And you see that it's dawning on her that, there are different ways to fight.
Yes.
And I mean, Ted just owns the room as he always does with his kindness and his honesty, and showing us how to be better people, I think. And then you see Nate going to check social media again, and this time everybody's turned on him because he's been owned.
Yeah, and the headlines are like Ted Lasso and and who's the wanker now with Nate's photo.
Yeah,
so I love that. I love that the reactions to both press conferences after the West Ham one, Rebecca slammed her laptop closed. after the Richmond one, Nate slammed his laptop closed. So I love the symmetry there. I thought that was very, very well done.
Yeah, I thought it was a great episode. It had so much in it. I mean, we've just discussed so many different aspects, but you've got to watch the episode again, and I will before Tuesday night. I actually forgot that Apple uploads everything on the Tuesday evening.
Yeah,
and actually, it was like
for us.
Yeah, it was like we were in bed, and I just clicked on the TV, and it was like 11 o'clock, and we've been binge watching Picard. And when I turn on the TV, our Apple TV kicks in and it shows us what's up. I'm like, oh, it's up, it's up, it's up. So me and the missus watched it, and I went to bed very happy, very happy. And I will be very happy on Tuesday night as well. I think it was an excellent start.
I thought so too. But some of the reactions, as you mentioned in the beginning, some of the reactions haven't been great, and maybe it is being a victim of its own success, but I just want to be like, guys, calm down. Like some people were like, I don't know about the season 3 writing, man. I'm like, there's been one episode. How can you make any kind of
Well, seriously, everybody needs to just pull the plug out their asses and just fucking relax for a couple of weeks. And it's interesting. I saw somebody post something on Twitter today or yesterday and said that the second season had the same response, where it's like, oh, it's not as good, and that's because we've formulated all our own plans for Ted and the crew and how things have to work out, and if it doesn't go the way we want, we're all going to get upset. We're going to take to social media and we're going to demand that it all gets redone. And I mean, that just goes to show how sad we are as a species, how devolved we are due to social media, that we can't let artists do artist things. And I've been guilty of it. I mean, there are shows that have ended or games that have had endings that I really didn't like. I mean,
but at least you played through the end before you judged it. Like,
oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, the only time I've really got pissed off of the ending of a game was Mass Effect 3, simply because, it didn't do what they said it was going to do. And they redid it. I'm glad they redid it. The game's better for it. Now, people said, oh, you should have let them, keep that original ending. That original ending wasn't what they promised. And if you are promising one thing, deliver it. Don't deliver something else that's an inferior product for that. Now, the Ted Lasso team aren't promising anything.
Right.
Except maybe that this is the end for the show.
Right.
And we're just part of this ride. And I think we need to be happy that we have had this show in our life. And anybody who's critiquing it insanely hard and saying it's not a patch on season 1 after one episode, fucking relax.
Yeah.
That's the new, never mind believe, relax and believe, but relax.
I can't help but think of the immortal lyrics of Lenka, who once said, just enjoy the show.
Exactly. It's not life and death.
Yeah.
Entertainment.
I mean,
let us be entertained. Yes. Exactly.
Like Robbie Williams said, let me entertain you. Is that the lyric? I don't know.
Let me entertain you.
I think that's the lyric.
Yeah.
So, guys, we want to know what you think.
And girls.
Sorry, ladies, gentlemen.
Binaries.
And everyone out there, except you, JK. I don't want to hear what you have to say, JK Rowling. I'm kidding. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Call me. So what did you think about Ted Lasso episode 1 of season 3? Do you like where things are going? What did you think of my 2 theories, the Richard Wine theory and the Coach Dr. Sharon quitting theory? Do you have any theories of your own? Let us know in the comments section. Leave us some comments, like, subscribe. And Marcus, do you have anything to say before we end this episode?
Bring on number 2. Poopy.
And we will see you next time on the BeeRPad. Thanks for watching, guys.